Hi, I have a story in the weekend edition. Cover is good. Medical science and robots. That's going good so far. And this is my story. And there's Colin. Hi, Colin. So this is kind of funny because I wrote a very long version of this, and I had to cut it down by half. To get even close to where it was supposed to be. And this is the first time I could have continued on another page. So they kept what I sent them. Good. But yeah, Sinatra, the mob, and an Atlantic Canadian walk into a bar. They really did. So this is about a man named Sandford Waterman, Sandy Waterman, which is, if you ever need a fictional character name, that's a good one. He was from either Nova Scotia or Newfoundland. I couldn't confirm which one. There's a lot of Watermans from Newfoundland, but I did find Nova Scotian records that would be consistent with, you know, like his mother's name, time, everything. So he was an Atlantic Canadian, for sure. I don't really know where. The FBI has him down as from Nova Scotia, and he has an entire file. So they probably had some intel that I don't have. But anyway, he goes to New York as a child, and that's kind of where he grew up. He went to New York University. He went and fought in the Second World War with the Navy, although he is listed as a Canadian. I don't know. Can you do that? I guess you can do that. But he comes back from the war, and he gets hooked up with this guy named Meyer Lansky, who was an associate of the Jewish mafia. And the two of them go to Vegas in the 50s and start buying into hotels. So the first place that they bought into was the Sands. And the Sands was very successful. It had a lot of celebrities come. One notable thing was they had a band in residence called the Bellboys, and the Bellboys did a very specific cover of the song Hound Dog. And in the 1950s, Elvis, because the place was a who's who, stops by and listens to this band, and he hears their version of Hound Dog. And that's now the version you hear from Elvis. So that's a pretty cool kind of connection. So he's into the Sands. At the time, Frank Sinatra was kind of coming back on the scene. He had a career lull, and he was kind of coming back in Vegas. And Meyer Lansky, Waterman's friend, approached Sinatra at the bar one night and said, "Hey, would you want to start performing at the Sands?" And Sinatra said yes, which would start a whole bunch of crap for Sandy Waterman as a manager, because Sinatra was really great for stakeholders. Not so much for management, because Sinatra thought his existence was enough. Who cares about insurance and profits? You have Sinatra. Fair enough. So they get Sinatra, and he immediately is kind of chaotic. You know, he's bringing in some more mob friends. I mean, they're the mob, but they're not. He starts bringing the outfit. Sam Giancana was his good friend. I'll get to that. There's an interesting connection again. So at the same time, Waterman buys into Cal-Neva Lodge and Casino, which is a very interesting place if you ever want to look into it. It was frequented a lot by various Kennedys, JFK and his brother Robert, well, Bobby. And so it was kind of a chill little resort, and it's called Cal-Neva because it's on the California and Nevada border. So he starts buying into that, and then Sinatra had been there before. He actually overdosed there in 1951, but he starts going around because he has connections to Waterman, and he says, "I'm going to buy into Cal-Neva too." And he ends up buying in like 50%, and I think by then, in like the late 50s, Waterman owns like 16%. It's not a small share, but it's not, you know, he didn't really have any control. So that seems fine, because Sinatra's a big name. Maybe he'll bring more people to Cal-Neva. And he did, but again, he brought the mob and Marilyn Monroe and the Kennedys and put them all together at the same time, which, if you have any knowledge of the Kennedys or Monroe or the Mafia, they're a really not winning combination. So this is kind of where there's a cool connection. So Sinatra was friends with Sam Giancana. And Sam Giancana is known as an associate of my favorite guy, Johnny Roselli. And Roselli, earlier in the 40s, had first funded Frank Sinatra going into film. So they're kind of all connected in that way. But also, if you take Cal-Neva in the early 60s, obviously before 1963, you also have the Kennedys and Sam Giancana, who allegedly had a part in killing JFK, at the same spot at the same time. So anyway, things are going pretty good. Waterman is kind of driven nuts by Sinatra, but the deal breaker there was Sinatra's friend Giancana was banned from Nevada casinos. He was not allowed in there. They're trying to get the mob out, although the mob built them, but whatever. The Kennedys had something to do with that too. And they said, you know what? You can have your gaming license at Cal-Neva. You can have Sinatra, but Sam can't show up. And then Sam showed up for 10 days, and Waterman told Sinatra, get this guy out of here. We're going to lose our license. And Sinatra was like, you want me to tell the head of the Chicago outfit to get lost? No. So he wouldn't do it. And the FBI already had the place tapped because the place was run full of politicians and mobsters. So they lost their license, and they ended up selling Cal-Neva to someone else. So shortly after that, Waterman gets out of the stands. He still owns a part, but he's no longer doing management there. And this is long-winded. Thank you if you're still listening. So he is getting out of his management position at the Sands, and Sinatra's still staying. He's happy. They're separating. He goes and manages Caesars Palace. And immediately when he starts Caesars Palace, this guy named Evel Knievel shows up, and he looks at the fountains in front of Caesars Palace, and he goes to management and he says, which was Sandy Waterman, and says, I'm going to jump those fountains. And they said, okay. And he didn't jump the fountains. It's all right after a bit. But anyway, so Waterman's living the good life, managing one of Vegas's biggest locales, and he's heard of Sinatra. But in 1967, Sinatra's wife, Mia Farrow, gambles all of her money away at the Sands, and where he's still performing. And Sinatra's like, don't worry about it, I'll get it back. And at that time, Howard Hughes, who was kind of like an Elon Musk of then, had bought the hotel and basically said, no, don't forgive him. And so he flipped out, and in reaction, he drove a golf cart through the front windows of the restaurant where the casino manager was, and he threatened the casino manager, and the casino manager slapped him, and he quit. So where else would you go after the Sands and you need money? It's to perform at Caesars Palace. So he's back with Waterman again. And it went okay. It actually went all right. He was there in 1967. He was supposed to be there all through 70 until the end. And he got until September. But again, he was gambling. And he wanted the stakes to go higher and higher and higher. And he had reached a limit. And they just said, we can't give you any more. And he said, well, you have to. Got into a huge scuffle with the staff. And Sandy Waterman had to come down and calm him down. And when he wouldn't, and after Sinatra grabbed him by the throat, he aimed a gun at his head. Didn't do the golf cart bit after that. He actually went into hiding. And no charges were pressed because Sinatra wouldn't talk. So anyway, that's how an Atlantic Canadian held a gun to Frank Sinatra in 1970. Waterman died in 1977 in a car accident, unfortunately. No children either. But yeah, it's a cool little tidbit. Only us. Only we'd have the chutzpah to do that. But click the link if you haven't already. Pick up a copy if you see it, and thank you.